As Meggie said, I'm Kira McClelland. I'm Senior Manager of Women's Markets at Westpac and have the ultimate privilege of running Ruby Connection. Super excited. I can't believe we're here again another month later to have such an awesome conversation again today. For those of you who are new that haven't joined us yet on this webinar, Ruby Connection is Westpac's online community for women. First of its kind to be set up by an Aussie bank. We are a central platform for like-minded women to come together and build connections and build financial confidence together no matter where you are in your financial journey. Love being part of these sorts of conversations. They're inspiring. They're challenging us all to think outside the square and see what else is possible. So thank you so much to Anna and Manuri for joining us today and for Meggie being our wonderful host. So I'll throw it back to you and enjoy the discussion.
Thank you so much, Kira. It is a pleasure to be hosting you all today for this awesome Lunch and Learn series with Westpac's Ruby Connection. So it is just such a privilege to be virtually joining Anna from Baird Footwear and Manuri from HealthMatch. Ladies, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedules. I'm going to throw it over you to introduce yourselves because I won't be able to do it justice to your amazing stories. Anna, can I get you to kick us off with who you are and why you started Baird Footwear?
Sure. So I'm Anna Baird and I started Baird 12 years ago in 2008, and I'd been practicing as a podiatrist for 7 years before I started the business, and I was literally seeing women every day, reaching for a brochure that had shoes in it that were clearly designed for old women. There was a gap in the market. There were no shoes that I would want to wear myself that I could recommend that were actually comfortable and good for you. So I sort of Googled Australian shoe manufacturers to try and find me a factory, found a factory, cut back podiatry, started developing the range, and then sort of the rest is history. It took 3 years developing the first range, which was pretty hideous initially, and then I opened my first store in Toorak in 2008. And then, so 12 years on, we've now got a team of 70 at the moment. We're sort of annual turnover is about 25 million. We're growing 50. We were 50% year on year before COVID, and now it's all online. So and we're still tracking okay. It's sort of 70% growth with online. So yeah, 12 years on it. It's been worth the hard yards.
Well, that's interesting to hear you say that, Anna, because I'm sure a lot of people look at you and the success of your business. I live in New York City and I have your shoes delivered to me over here. So I know you have a huge global arm of the business too. I'm sure a lot of people probably look at you and think you sort of started it in 12 months and now it's this great success. And we don't always hear about the 12 years that it took to get there. So I'm really excited to dive into that with you in a little bit. And Manuri, you've not been going for 12 years necessarily, although I'm sure it feels like that sometimes with the incredible trajectory you've had already with HealthMatch. Can you tell us a little bit about what made you want to start this platform? Because it's all about matching patients with medical trials, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background's a bit different. I guess I was in med school a couple years ago working in a brain cancer lab where we were running a clinical trial and we were trying to find patients to join this trial, and only two people in all of Australia ended up joining. And I thought that was really bizarre given the context of a condition like brain cancer where there's no standard treatment that works. People are willing to fly to Germany, wherever, to try and access the latest therapies. And it became really clear that unless you knew the right clinician or you're visiting a particular hospital site as a patient, it was very hit or miss whether you got access to clinical trials or even knew about them. So about 2 years ago, I made the leap from med school, deferred my 5th year, and decided to start HealthMatch. So we launched the platform to the public last year. It's been a really interesting journey to date. Does feel like more than 2 years, definitely. We grew the team this year from 5 to 20. So it's been really interesting for us to see the platform scale and be able to reach lots of Australians. I think we have 40,000 people on it now. So yeah, it's been exciting.
It's so exciting, and it's been wonderful. We met years ago, I think just before you started the business, when you were first pitching for investment. And what's really interesting about our two guests today is that Anna bootstrapped her company and self-funded it, and Manuri's raised capital, I think $7.5 million to date, Manuri?
Yeah.
And so I'm interested for everyone on the call today, and we're going to run a poll in just a minute to get a sense, but I'm interested, Anna, do you regret not raising capital? Would it have been easier in those early days to take some money because you were still working as a podiatrist when you very first started having the shoes made?
Yeah, no, I don't regret it. I mean, we certainly did it tough, I think. But I've been sort of incredibly lucky. My husband's an accountant, so he was working as an accountant at the time and in the early days. So we threw everything into it. I think if you're going to start a business, you've got to have a fair appetite for risk. So we sold our house, we loaded up on credit card debt, we did everything, to try and keep this business alive. We sort of believed in the business. And I think we did have, a lot of it was, a good relationship with the bank. And that was actually, I can credit Andrew to that more than me, because he was very good at these relationships with the bank, that giving them accurate numbers, information all the time. So they could see that we were growing. They could see that we were tracking okay. And those relationships have been really important from day one. I don't regret that we sort of did it on our own, but certainly was the first 6 years were very tough financially.
And I'm sure they must have been tough, and probably, I'm going to guess, quite stressful.
Yeah, incredibly stressful. But I think that is, you're making mistakes all the time. And as long as you're learning from you see the positive in everything that goes wrong is the key to any sort of successful venture at all, I think. Learning constantly, rejigging what can we do differently, and just seeing the positives. If that didn't happen, then we wouldn't be in the position now to have learnt from it. So, definitely stressful. I think anyone out there in those dark days, there's certainly tough times, early days in business.
That's so interesting. And it's also really interesting. Thank you to everyone who's been voting in our poll. More than half of you are thinking about starting a business, which is great. You're in the right place. We've got a lot of knowledge to share in the short amount of time we've got together. If you have questions, please send them through on the chat, and we'd be more than willing to answer them for you. Manuri, for someone on the call today who's thinking about starting a business, what would your advice be in terms of the finances? Because Anna sort of, built a great relationship with her bank. They had credit cards to start with. You went a different route, and it's a very different business. It's a consumer business versus a tech company. What would your advice be to someone who's starting out and who's maybe thinking they might want to raise capital?
Yeah, I think immerse yourself around people that have done it before. Try and find some mentors, find people that have built companies, whether it's whether they've raised capital or not, just to get a sense of what's involved. Go out there and test your idea. Go try and get customers. I think as much as you can do beforehand, before raising capital, is incredibly helpful. So if you can build a prototype, if you can, there's so many tools out there, and I wish even two years ago I had have known what tools existed, and that maybe we didn't need to raise our first round of capital, and that you could have actually got into a certain stage without doing that. So the longer you can wait and the more traction you can get behind you, I think that would be the advice that I'd give to anyone considering starting.
And for you, Anna, I mean, you were very close to your customer. You probably had a lot of customers like me who maybe had a couple of back issues. I've got a few knee issues. Sorry for the too much information. But I was always trying to find shoes other than Birkenstocks that were kind of allegedly good for me, but that weren't going to look horrendous. And I was like my beautiful grandmother, who's albeit, 60 years older than me. So I've experienced the problem that you solve with Baird Footwear. And I've got my shoes on now. You can't really see them. Not very flexible, but I do wear my Baird boots every day here in New York. So you kind of really knew that customer. How did you have the conviction to sell your house? That's a big step to take.
Yeah, I think the whole way along, none of it, I think we always believed in it. And I think we always, at the end of the day, for a business to grow, you need the best team. It always comes down to that. So we had a great team around us. So it never felt like it was just me, or just, my husband and I sort of doing this from the start. If you have the right team, then you've got this energy of people all driven to try and make your idea work. So yes, we were financially really struggling and we were taking all the risk, but I always felt that it always felt like we were heading in the right direction. But it is employing really good people is the key. And we sort of employ for attitude and then train for skill, get really good people. And we're a customer service business. We need people that know how to look after people. And the reason this business has worked is no doubt the people that we employ and how we look after the customers. So I think, one thing I remember hearing Andrew Banks speak, a few years ago, and at some point someone had asked him who trained all his amazing team years ago when he had a big recruitment business. And he said their parents do. And it is something that really resonated with me, is that employ really good people that know how to look after people, and the rest kind of follows. If you're looking after people, even if we'll have problems with products sometimes, if you look after people, especially with online businesses now, if they can trust and your business has integrity, you've got, people, a business they can trust, people that they can trust, then you're destined to succeed, really. I think if you're honest and open and the business and your people have integrity, then the risks don't seem that risky, because it just is an organic growth that happens.
It's really interesting you talk about the power of your team to get that success. We're talking about starting up and scaling up today. And Manuri, I'm interested to hear from you, because Anna's got 70 staff and you're at how many now, Manuri? You're at 20, is that right?
20, yeah.
So that's a lot of growth in 2 years as well. Like, that's quite a quick trajectory. What are some of the challenges that you've had along the way? Anna talks about hiring for integrity. What's some of the values that you look for when you're hiring in your business as well?
Yeah, I think for us, it's super important. We're building a very mission-driven company. It's about, being able to put healthcare in the hands of patients and sort of make it more accessible. So people that really believe in that mission are key, especially because, as Anna would probably know as well, like, you have hard times. It's not always ups. It's definitely a roller coaster. So you can, having hires that really believe in what you're doing, and people join the team that have that sort of belief in the mission, incredibly important. And then I think for me as well, I remember one of our board members saying sort of the three things that they used to look for. So we've got Paul Bassett from Seek on our board, and he used to mention that there's experience, there's horsepower, and there's values. And if you look at those three things, how would you sort of rank them? And for me, it's always going to be values first. And then I actually rank horsepower over experience. A lot of people in our team might not be the most experienced in terms of, they haven't had 10 years behind them, but they're incredibly passionate and they've got a lot of horsepower and a lot to give. So that's been really great for us, hiring, people that are just hungry and want to build something cool and exciting.
I feel like we need to get a t-shirt or a coffee mug made up of that: experience, horsepower, and values. That really resonates with me, Manuri, and it sounds like you and Anna are quite aligned on the values side of things as well. My company, PepTalkHer, is similarly, we focus on the values as well. Like, our mission is all around closing the pay gap and supporting professional women. And you're quite right. If people are not aligned to your mission, it's very hard to all be steering the ship in the same way. There's a lot of people on the call today who have their own company, and then there's maybe a third of the audience that are thinking about starting a company. And I know that a lot of them are wondering, well, I'm so small, I can't afford to hire yet. That kind of awkward balance when you're starting up and you want to scale, but you can't scale without people. Do you have any advice for that, Manuri? I know you relied a lot on some amazing advisors who really kind of helped you bridge that gap to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think part of our early days was being able to bring people on, and they may not have taken, they may have taken pretty heavy pay cuts in terms of the salaries that they were on. And we gave out equity in the company for those early employees who then really believed in that mission and then were super aligned with the success of the company. So as we kept growing, they were incentivized as well to see that growth through. So I think, perhaps it's like balancing it like that, and being able to pull people in for less, than what they would typically be on in market. But also, mentors have been amazing. People that have just knowledge in certain areas have been incredible through my journey, just to lean on and get insights and advice. Because haven't ever done this before. So it's great to have people that, you know, have those domain expertise.
And it's an interesting process, isn't it, when you start your own business and you start to meet people who are incredibly generous with their time and experience. But they also, I think something I've learned along the way is that a lot of people are making it up too. Like, you think you're the only one, but turns out there's a lot of people out there who are still just trial and error. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Anna, what was one of your biggest growing pains when you went 12 years ago from sort of starting making your shoes here in Australia to now 12 years on, turning over, you know, $25 million plus a year and selling shoes all around the world?
There were so many growing pains. I think the biggest one that's most relevant to us now, and I think any sort of tech business now, online business, is the tech stack, basically our website. So we have massive traffic peaks during our sale period. So the last few years has been huge amounts of investment into this to make sure that it holds up and doesn't crash during sales. So we finally nailed it this year. We'd spent, I think, $500,000 in the last 18 months on this site. And then in March, we had it completely perfect. And then our third-party payment app collapsed on us instead of our website. So that's an ever challenging, you know, situation. I think anyone with online businesses is kind of in the same state. And we've got a new site launching next week, so I'm expecting to have a whole new set of headaches next week. But that, you know, there's a million pain points, but that's certainly been a big ongoing one.
Well, and it sounds like that's actually echoed by our audience today. And I'm just going to share the results of this poll with you. A lot of people on the call say funding is definitely a big concern, staff, which you've both mentioned, and also technology / everything. Because, you know, there's so much to do, right, when you're starting your own business. And Anna, to your point, you spent $500,000 on your website. We actually, cheeky secret, we actually, I think, maybe spend $30 a month on our website. We use Squarespace, which is like very basic, drag and drop. I promise you, any of you on the call today could build your own website within maybe 2 or 3 hours using Squarespace. There's a couple of them out there. There's like Wix, a few others. So don't freak out if you don't have a $500,000 budget for your website just yet. You can definitely get something up and running really quickly using, as Manuri said, some of those tools that are around now that are just so easy to use that really in the last couple of years have grown significantly. Oh, here we go. D uses Squarespace as well. Yeah, it's very easy. And it's not, you know, it's not for everyone as you scale to become $1 billion business. And I hope we've got a lot of you on the call today too. But to start with, it's absolutely fine. Please feel free to send through your questions for Anna and Manuri about what it was like to start a business, what it's like to raise capital, and how they've faced the scaling challenges along the way. We've got a few Baird fangirls on the call, Anna, and I know that it's also fan guys as well, because my fiance actually has a pair too. So someone out there says that you can never have enough pairs of leopard shoes and boots. And look, not going to disagree with you there. I think that's really good advice. Manuri, one of the things that I'm really interested from your perspective, when you raise capital, you're basically letting other people into your business, right? And it's not just you anymore. You kind of form this functional or dysfunctional family, depending on the company. How have you navigated that process?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I think we're on to our third cap raise now, and every time we do one, I always think that it'll be easier than the last, and it never is. But yeah, you just have to be very selective with the investors that you let onto your cap table, because I think, you know, you've probably heard this a million times, but it's like a marriage, and most times that relationship lasts longer than most marriages. So you need to be very, very selective with the venture capitalists you take on, the angel investors you take on, because these are going to be the people that support your business and help propel things forward. But they can also, you know, give you a lot of headaches and heartaches if they're not the right investors. So I've been really fortunate with the angel investors that we brought on were super supportive, and especially in the early days, we didn't actually have venture capital. It was angel investors in the first round, and they were able to sort of lean on their networks to help us scale, hire, grow, you know, do partnerships, and that was fantastic. And then the VCs that we now have on the cap table are also really great. We've gone quite lucky, but I know a lot of founders who, you know, there's a lot of tension that exists with their investors. So like, I would say get to know them over a course of time. If you're going to raise capital, try and, you know, 6 months ahead of time, start getting to know those investors and spending time with them.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I'm interested in, Manuri, because how old were you when you first started raising capital, and what was it that gave you the confidence to believe in yourself, to believe in this vision, to match patients with health trials? The confidence to go out there and say, do you know what, I've got a multi-million-dollar idea here. You should absolutely write a check for me.
I think it was a whole bunch of naivety. I think it was just not really knowing how hard it was going to be. Really underestimated it. And because I had no idea I was out there with this big, bold mission and, give me capital and I'm going to be able to build a company. So I think being naive about it was great. It gave me a lot of confidence. I was 24. I thought the idea and sort of, the mission of what we wanted to build, like I really believed in it, and was lucky to meet people early on who also believed in that vision. But yeah, I think it was just a bunch of naivety, really.
I love it. And what about you, Anna? What advice do you have, like for people on the call who are thinking about starting a company or who are kind of feeling like they're a little bit stuck? What's the best bit of advice that you have throughout the process?
I think don't listen to the naysayers. I think anyone that's saying they've got an idea, you'll have everyone come out of the woodwork and say, oh, if it was that easy, someone else would have done it. Or what if someone does it and copies you and does it better? And I think if you really believe in the gap in the market, then no one will do it better than you. I think, I think don't listen to everyone. If you believe in it, don't worry about what anyone else is thinking. It's your own journey. And
there we go. We've got you back. Thank you. So interesting. And thank you to everyone who's sending through their questions. We really appreciate it. One of the questions here from Sophia, which I think is really interesting, and Manuri, I'll throw this to you first before coming back to Anna. How did you know you had a winning idea? You deeply knew emotionally, Manuri, didn't you, that there was something really wrong with the health system?
Yeah, I mean, it was just the gap that I continue to see, like in med school. So in clinic, I'd constantly see patients trying to find clinical trials and be so stuck. I saw a case where I think this was actually the turning point, where it was a family that had come into clinic. Their son had lung cancer, and he had actually met someone while he was getting treatment, the same age as him. She was a lawyer. She had the same type of lung cancer. Her dad was a doctor. He ended up getting her onto a clinical trial because he knew the system. And unfortunately, their son actually passed away and he had the same type of lung cancer. He never got onto the trial. And they found out about this afterwards. And I was like, wow, like just more and more of these cases were becoming so apparent. And everyone had tried to tackle this problem from a very, focused on the clinicians, focused on hospitals, and, the patients were always the byproduct. And I think seeing that and knowing that, healthcare is really old school in the way they do things, and it was time to sort of change it up. It was seeing that gap constantly, and then that really validated what I wanted to build.
That validation is so important, isn't it? And Anna, tell us about, what was it like the first time you sold a pair of Baird shoes to someone who you didn't know, who wasn't in your family or wasn't a patient? What was that like?
Probably terrifying, because they were hideous and they were pretty uncomfortable. So I think I just crossed my fingers it didn't come back in the door the next day. They were dark days. I don't even want to remember back then. Glad they're past. I'm sure it was felt good at the time.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because your business pivots and changes so much as you go along the way. I want to talk about the other side. So you mentioned, Anna, for you, that your husband is an accountant. So keeping track of the numbers was sort of core to your business from the start. Manuri, finance-wise, has that something that you've had to get comfortable with? Is that in your wheelhouse of expertise necessarily, or?
It definitely isn't. It was having to bring on a team that actually had that skill set. So early on, first sort of hires had that background in finance and that skill set, and that's been invaluable because I certainly didn't have it. So I think if you don't have that, surround yourself with people that do. Try and bring someone onto your team that can fill that gap.
Definitely. Surrounding yourself with people who have the skills that you don't is so important. And I want to talk about the other side of businesses too, because it's very, it's very glamorous to have a business that turns over multiple millions of dollars or raise millions of dollars in capital. But there is also a cost and a consequence and a stress of having your own business. And how did you cope with the emotional roller coaster that comes with founding a company?
I think I cried every day for the first 12 months. I remember that. And our shoes, we couldn't fit all the tins in our little shopping tour rack. So the shoes came in tins at that stage. And so I had all these tins, racks of shoes in our bedroom. So I had to look at these bloody things when I went to sleep at night. I woke up with them the next day. Oh, now I can't stand. They're really pretty now. I hate those things. So how did I stay positive? I think it was, you keep seeing the positives in all the learnings, everything that went wrong, what would we do differently? And then surround yourself with the right people that believe in it, that helping to grow it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I hope you don't cry yourself to sleep every night 12 years on.
No.
Glad to hear it. And Manuri, you actually got married, I think, just as you were starting the business, right? It kind of all happened around the same time?
Yeah, actually last year when we were doing our Series A cap raise, I was also getting married at the same time, and we got the term sheet in like a week before the wedding. So it was just like chaos. I was on the phone to our lawyers, like at the rehearsal dinner, like right before, just trying to negotiate. And yeah, it was the most hectic period ever. Wouldn't do that again.
Wow. And so because you actually work very closely with your husband as well now in the business.
I do. So my husband joined the company. He's got that finance background. So that was, when I talk about an early hire that helped, fill that gap. He joined 2 years ago. We've been working together since. And yeah, we're all in. So every day is HealthMatch. There's never really a break.
And how do you find that? Does that get too much? Would you recommend that to people? Or what's your advice for people on finding that balance, if we can call it that?
One, in terms of working with your partner, I think it really depends on your relationship and how you navigate that. In terms of it getting too much, I think when you're building a company, it just becomes a part of you. It's really hard to switch off. It's really hard to be like, okay, we'll always go to dinner and be like, no talking about HealthMatch tonight. And 2 minutes in, the conversation it just pops up, and it's really hard to disconnect. But as long as you find some time to do other things in your life, hang out with friends, socialize, find that disconnect in some form of, activity, I think that's super healthy and important.
And Anna, what about you in your household? Do you have a no talking about shoes, no talking about feet at the dinner table policy?
Can you hear me? It was just a bit sketchy then.
I can hear you.
Am I frozen?
No, I've got you loud and clear. And do you have?
Good. No, we don't. I mean, I think so. Andrew wasn't in the business full time until the last couple of years, so he knows who's boss, so it works perfectly fine. But I mean, the benefit of having your partner in the business, and we're really lucky, we've got 2 kids, so we've got a lot of flexibility. So I think it works really well for us.
That's so awesome. Now, for everyone who's on the call today, we've got about a minute left. If you have a final question, please feel free to send it through. We are going to email you an amazing discount code for Baird shoes, so watch out credit cards. That's coming through in the email in the next couple of hours. Also, please head to healthmatch.io, because there are a bunch of really great health trials that you can sign up for, including on polycystic ovaries and others. Manuri, we've actually got a couple of questions here for people saying, are you growing? Are you accepting? Can you just give people a bit of an understanding of, if they want to get involved, or if they've got a family member who they'd like to connect with a health trial, what they can do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, we're live. We have over 300 condition areas on the platform. So all the way from chronic disease like Crohn's, eczema, even acne, all the way to oncology. There's a whole bunch of condition areas. So for anyone that has or lives with chronic conditions, and I know everyone's got someone that they know who has some condition, jump on HealthMatch and see what options are out there for you, because there's a lot of innovative treatments coming out, and this is a way to access them early.
Thank you so much, Manuri. Thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing. Anna, thank you to you for all the amazing shoes that you've designed. You've certainly saved my soles on multiple occasions. And a huge thank you to all of you all around Australia. And indeed, I know we've got some people from overseas here as well who are joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us. We are running these on the last Friday of every month, so we would love for you to bring your lunch, bring your dogs. There's a few dogs on the call today. Bring your kids and join us next month for the Westpac Lunch and Learns in partnership with me and PepTalkHer. We are just delighted to be here. We've got an amazing survey that really helps us to adapt our sessions going forward for you and what you want to learn about. We are here to help support you in the community. So I've just popped that in the chat. We'd love you to fill that out if you could. I've popped in the HealthMatch and Baird Footwear information in the chat panel as well. So do check it out and support these amazing Aussie entrepreneurs. They are very inspiring. And Manuri and Anna, we are so grateful for you for spending your time with us today. So check them out, follow along on all the socials, check them out on LinkedIn and their websites, and tell your friends and family members about HealthMatch because they're doing life-saving work, quite literally. So a huge thank you. Please enjoy your weekend. Do stay safe. And we're thinking of you, everyone in Melbourne. And we are hoping that COVID ends sooner rather than later. And we will see you next month. Thanks, everyone.